Hello, welcome back to Tales and Tales with Brittany, and today we are going to be going over my hardest reading challenge you'll ever do 2.0 plans. The hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, or Herkyad, is essentially a bingo board of challenges. Each square is a difficult challenge that you'll have to usually read multiple books in order to be successful. So ideally the goal of Herkyad is to have a complete bingo board blackout. Last year I completed in Herkyad and I don't think I completed more than one or two prompts total. It was definitely fun to work through. Last year's prompts were a little bit more indie focused, and as an audiobook only reader, it was a little bit more difficult to find things by indie authors or self-published authors that I was overly interested in for trying to read for the squares. Now that I have a little bit more under my belt and have read a few more of the more popular romantices and romances and fantasies, I'm a little bit more willing to branch out a little bit. This year's Herkyad, the challenges are much more focused on diversity, and it looks like we have a little bean. Yes? What are you excited for Herkyad? He says, I'm excited for more treaties. Yeah? So let's switch on over to my computer. Thank you for joining me for my Herkyad 2.0 plans and challenge update. My hope is to do these updates every 4 to 6 weeks, depending on kind of the progress that I am making. Definitely let me know down below in the comments if you are participating in Herkyad, and if so, how far have you completed so far? I do believe we are just about 5 weeks into the challenge, so hopefully you've made a fair bit of progress. Thank you and have a wonderful day, whether it's morning, noon, and night, and I hope your next read is a 5-star. Bye! Welcome to my Herkyad 2.0 Canva templates. I have adapted a lot of these templates from the templates that were created by Sarah of Freshly Read Books. She created her own kind of version of Herkyad where she's combining Herkyad 1.0 and Herkyad 2.0, combining her favorite prompts across the two different versions and trying to complete all of that, I believe, in either 16 or 18 months. I will say kind of my plans for Herkyad 2.0, at least kind of for July and August, I kind of allowed myself to mood read things kind of on my TBR for other reasons, and then I've kind of been slotting them into my various prompts as I read them. I do believe starting in September, I will be a little bit more intentional with my reading. I might specifically try to pick things for various prompts to hopefully try to start knocking some prompts off of the list. There are a few prompts you'll see as we go that are starting to fill up kind of on their own. Some of the a little bit more easy to fulfill challenges are starting to be completed. So we shall see what that ends up looking at. Like, I will say we are about 6 weeks into the challenge for me, and I've read about 10 books, as I had said in the beginning. I am a little bit behind where I would want to be. So this is the alphabet reading challenge. This is not an official part of the challenge for Herkyad 2.0, but we are from Herkyad 1.0. I just like kind of keeping track of all of the books that I read as I go through the alphabet. I think last year I was able to complete most of them, other than I think probably X and Z are the ones I didn't hit last year. I'm not going to go out of my way to complete the alphabet reading challenge, only because kind of it's not part of my Herkyad challenge, but I figured I'd keep this slide because Sarah had a version of it in her Canva template for her version of Herkyad, so I figured I might as well, just for fun, keep track of this. So the first Herkyad square is by the hundreds. Essentially, you have to read a book in 100 pages, a 200-page range, 300-page range, etc. As you can see, I'm already about just past halfway done with these books. Don't expect it to be that difficult to read these books. I'll probably continue to kind of slot books in here as I go, as I'm finding kind of areas that I'm not able to kind of slot them in elsewhere. You are allowed to double up on books. And the second square is a 24-hour readathon. I am still trying to decide when I'm going to want to do this. I'm considering potentially doing this over the winter holidays, as I have a bunch of time back to back off. I think I'm off for 5 days over the winter holidays. We'll see what I'm able to do. We'll see if my family ends up having plans almost every day, or if I'm able to carve out my own little bit of reading time. The next square is the subgenre square. So you can choose any type of genre and then read multiple subgenres within it. Mine are a little bit more, not really more nuanced. I'm kind of going a little bit more particular in mine, in that I did elect to do romance as my subgenres. My main genre that I read from, I would say, is romantasy, but I do say about 20% of my reading does end up being regular romance. So I'm hoping to kind of slot these in by reading some of my favorite subgenres. I've already read my contemporary book. Continuing on, I'm hoping to read a historical romance, a paranormal romance, a sports romance, a mafia romance, and a dark romance. We will see if I happen to slot in a different subgenre instead for these, as there are always kind of little subversions of romance out there. The next option is the series Staircase. So this is the one I'm going to find probably the most challenging with my current book ban of not starting any new series until I've earned it, and also not starting any new series until I'm back under 100 currently reading series. Luckily for the standalone, that's easy. I can read that without starting a new series. And for the quartet or longer series, I can use a series that I've already started, as long as there's at least 4 more books left in the series. So I do have a few books where that is the case. But for duology and trilogy, I will have to start a new book series. So going to definitely kind of keep these squares in mind, and hopefully start series that I think I'm actually going to want to continue and fully finish before July next year. So the next square is award season. So my plan for the award season will probably be to follow along with the Goodreads Choice Awards this November, December, to see what I am able to read once those kind of semifinalists and finalists have been announced. We will see if I have happened to, at that time, read some books. I have only read, I believe, 9 new releases or 2025 releases so far at this time. So I'm not too sure if I have kind of even scratched the surface. So far, I will say I have probably read a few of the winners so far for this year, which unfortunately I think most of them were read prior to the start of Herkyad, so they won't count. But definitely excited to kind of approach the square in November. So the next square is the TBR game challenge. So the goal of this square is to play someone else's TBR game to build your TBR and read all of the books that you are able to pull by playing that game. Do you have a few TBR games in mind? I am a member of some BookTube Patreons that have kind of some fun games, and part of their perks are either we have access to their TBR game or access to their board, or there is kind of seasonal readathons that are based on their TBR game. So I think this is something that'll kind of come up kind of organically by playing one of those games from part of one of the Patreons I'm in, but we shall see. The next square is the last 10 years challenge, which is going to be more than 10 books. I'm still deciding if I'm going to slot in a book for 2026, but essentially you have to read a book that was released for each year in the past 10 years. Qwordy did say you can choose if you're doing kind of 2015 to 2025, or if you're doing 2016 to 2026. So far, I've only read Tress of the Emerald Sea as a reread that happened to slot into 2023. I do think this is continuing to be a square that I will probably continue to more mood read for and slot things in. And then kind of as the end of the challenge approaches, I will sit down and think about actually reading to specifically complete this square of anything that's left over. So this next square, I think, is going to be quite the challenge. It's adaptations. So essentially you have to either read, listen, or watch the adaptation that kind of falls into the various categories. There's a modern telling, there's a musical, there's a graphic novel, a play, a TV show, web series, an animation, and a movie. I don't currently have anything picked out in mind for most of these. I do think I will be kind of rewatching the first episode of Murderbot and kind of watching all of the Murderbot season 1 once I've confirmed that it's all been released, because I will have to subscribe to Apple TV in order to watch that, and I'm hoping to binge that over the course of a month. And then other than that, I'm still trying to decide what I will end up reading and watching. The next challenge is the translation challenge. You have to read 5 books that have been translated from another language, and each book has to be a different language. So it has to be at least 5 different languages. Don't currently have anything picked out for this square. It's probably going to be one I'm going to have to focus on. I think there's only 1 or 2 series I'm currently reading that have been translated from another language into English. The next square is Heritage Months. So my plan for this square is to make sure I'm reading the book during that specific Heritage Month. I'm going to kind of be picking through what I kind of have access to and hopefully discovering some new authors as well as potentially new series. We'll see if we are able to earn that. There is kind of bonus points that we can earn if we do end up reading a book during that specific month. Don't have anything currently picked out for most of these, so it'll be nice and fun to pick those out kind of as we go. The next challenge is a disability challenge. So for this one, we do have to read a book that prominently features a character with a disability. I do believe each disability has to be a different disability. The next square is for the Read the World challenge. So for this challenge, we have to pick a book that takes place on one of the kind of 7 continents. You can do Antarctica as a bonus, because surprisingly, there is apparently a lot of books that take place in Antarctica. Also don't have any current plans for this square. I'll probably end up having to choose a month and focus on this to be able to read through the 3 through the world. Next challenge is the Even Bigger Rainbow challenge. So essentially there's red, orange, yellow, green. There's teal, light blue, dark blue, gray blue, pink, black. I don't know if this is supposed to be white and it's just showing up funny on my with my pink background. Metallic and a rainbow book. This is probably a book that I'm probably going to more mood read. I'm going to slot things in as we go, and as we approach the end of the year, I'll focus a little bit more on choosing specific books if needed. Next square is to make a quote, and essentially we have to read books that have each of the words in that quote in the title. Haven't fully chosen my quote just yet, so that's something I will probably have to come back and do. Next square is Spooky Creatures Square. As you can see, I've actually made a fair bit of progress in this so far. You essentially have to read a book that prominently features a vampire, a shifter, a magic user, a fae folk, a spirit, a merfolk, a zombie, and an other creature of some kind. I probably expect to kind of finish this square probably by the end of October, as I find myself a bit more prone to more paranormal books in the fall. Next, we have the Become the Avatar Challenge. So for this, you can either read books that have earth, water, fire, or air on the cover as an actual picture description, or you can choose books that have earth, fire, water, air in the actual title. We'll see what I end up doing. I do think there are a few books that I am able to slot in for both options. So I'm thinking I'm going to try to do both, and there is kind of a bonus points if you do both. The next challenge is the Readathon challenge. So for this one, you essentially have to complete in a readathon, and you have to read books that kind of complete all of the prompts to be able to consider it completed. My plans for this square is I am participating in both the Readathon Rebellion as well as Aurelium or the Magical Readathon in September, and we'll see which one I'm more successful with, and I'll use that to slot that in for this challenge. Next challenge is Animal Friends. So essentially you have to read a book that prominently features house pets, an exotic pet, a farm animal, a wild animal, and a zoo animal. I also don't currently have any plans for this square. I'm expecting it's going to be something that's going to come up as I'm going through and reading things and slotting everything in. The next square is the Two-Spirit LGBTQIA plus rainbow, in which you have to read books that contain more diverse characters that fall into each of these labels, for lack of a better term, or self-identify as one of these terms. Another square that I think I'm going to have to at least be a little bit more focusing on, probably take a month to focus on, because I do find it's relatively easy to find lesbian, gay, bisexual, and polyamorous characters in books. I do find I'll probably have to do a little bit more digging to find trans, gender fluid, or two-spirited, intersex, asexual, or non-binary main characters. I definitely have read books where they have been side characters, but not that many books, at least that I am regularly exposed to, have them as main characters. I will say intersex was a very difficult one. Last year, I did end up reading An Unkindness of Ghosts for that slot, and I really did enjoy that, and don't know what otherwise I'm going to choose for that spot, because the other books weren't really calling to me. I'm not a big nonfiction fan. There is a spoiler, a nonfiction square coming up, so we will see how that ends up going. The next square is the I Miss Herkyad 1.0 square. Essentially, you have to choose your favorite prompt from Herkyad 1.0 and either do it for the first time or do it again. So I decided to do a square that required a little bit less reading, but still kind of gave me a tight timeline. There is only 4 books that I'll have to read, but I do have to read each kind of within a very specific time frame. For example, I have to read each of the books for these in that current season. Currently, it is August 14th, and I have just over a month to read a book that takes place in summer, unless I want to save this square for the very end and have to kind of read it at the very, very end. The next square is BIPOC authors. So essentially, I have to read books by 10 different BIPOC authors. They can be the same representation. The next challenge is probably going to be one that's a bit more challenging for me, and that's the New Releases Challenge. Essentially, you have to read each book either 60 days before, if you do happen to have the arc, or within 60 days after the book has been released. So this does give you a relatively tight timeline. It is currently August 14th, and I have yet to start on a book that was released in July, and I do ideally want to get through a July and August release kind of by this time next month. So wish me luck with that. I do kind of have a few reads slotted in my brain towards the end of the year and into next year that I think I'll end up using. But this will definitely be a little bit harder to keep up on. I have to be a little bit more intentional with it. Alrighty, so this one is probably the biggest challenge for me. Is essentially this square is to challenge yourself. So essentially, we have to come up with our own challenge to challenge ourselves. So I've spoken before, but I have a huge problem with starting series. I'm quite addicted to starting series and then not continuing them. So I've decided that I have to read 52 sequels as part of this challenge. So that does work out to be only one sequel per week. And that can be a sequel that is a manga or a graphic novel that's only going to take me 1 to 2 hours to read. Or it can be a big long sequel like Mother of Death and Dawn, my most recently finished sequel. So ideally, one per week is going to get me through. I'll probably kind of end up reading a whole bunch of sequels back to back or in kind of a short time frame, and then I'll be a little bit more relaxed. But especially with me right now not wanting to start new series, I'm finding I'm probably going to be entering in my standalone and my sequel era. It's either going to be one or the other. I'm going to kind of minimize any new starts that I can have as much as possible. Next challenge is a nonfiction challenge in which you have to read 5 nonfiction books about different categories, if that makes sense. So if you read a cookbook, you can't read another cookbook. Really not a big nonfiction challenge fan. I will say I did fail the genre challenge last year because I didn't read a nonfiction, and you only had to read one nonfiction book last year. Didn't read it. So we'll see what happens with me having to read 5 this year for things to be successful. So for Q's reviews and recommendations, you have to read a book that Q featured in a mini review, a full reading vlog, and kind of a YouTube short or a TikTok or an Instagram reel. So essentially, you do only have to read 3 books that she has featured. And then there is kind of the goal to either rate the book or compare the book and figure out if you liked it more than Q or if you liked it less than Q or if you agreed with Q. The very, very, very last part of Herkyad would be the bonus prompts. So at least so far, it's been once a month they have dropped a new prompt to help make things a little bit more challenging, to also keep you up with making progress, continuing progress. So far you've been able to earn kind of a free triple up of a book to use it for 3 prompts instead of just 2 by completing each of the bonuses so far. This is fantastic for me. I'm not sure if you didn't realize, but if I'm having to read 52 sequels this year, then those books are getting taken up. They can have 1 prompt and they can be part of the 52 sequels. So wherever I can triple up or earn a triple up with if possible, would be great. Thank you for joining me for my Herkyad 2.0 plans and challenge update. My hope is to do these updates every 4 to 6 weeks, depending on kind of the progress that I am making. Definitely let me know down below in the comments if you are participating in Herkyad, and if so, how far have you completed so far? I do believe we are just about 5 weeks into the challenge, so hopefully you've made a fair bit of progress. Thank you and have a wonderful day, whether it's morning, noon, and night, and I hope your next read is a 5-star. Bye!